So, welcome to Beauty of Colors podcast, John. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's my honor to be on the show.
You're welcome. So, John, tell us a little bit about you. You grew up in Michigan. What led you in becoming who you are today, a voice for the people?
Well, I come from a place called Highland Park, Michigan. It's really Highland Park, Detroit. It's a subsection of Detroit, and if you look it up, you'll see that it's been ranked one of the top worst places to live in America for the last 40 years. It's so bad that a sign was put up in the neighborhood that said, "Enter at your own risk. Police do not patrol the area." To give you an idea, I was raised by a single mother on welfare and food stamps with 6 kids. We were living in the inner city of that section. My father was not in the picture, left us sort of abandoned in that place. And my mother was stabbed in front of me when I was 6 years old. My first day of high school, I had a gun shoved in my mouth and the hammer cocked. Unfortunately, and I write about this in my book, I didn't tell anyone for 40 years, but I was raped over a period of 2 years by a predator in the neighborhood. So a pretty bad childhood, but everyone in my family was a high school dropout. And after the gun was put in my mouth, the first day of high school, I was a high school dropout too, for about 3 to 4 months. I eventually, I'll tell you what stopped it for you. You asked me, moments that make you in life. My mother caught me crying pretty hard, and she said, "What's wrong, son?" And I said, "Mom, I need to graduate high school. I want to go to college." And my mother said, "Well, just do what everybody else in the family did, like my oldest brother and cousins. Work for 3 years. When you're 17, she'll sign the papers and I can enlist in the military. And that'll be, my ticket out of the hood, if you will." And my mom is my hero. I want to make that clear before I tell you what happened next. And she put her arms around me because I said, "Mom, I want to go to college. I need to graduate high school." And my mother, my hero, put her arm around me and said, "Son, I'm sorry, but that's not for people like us." And that's what generational poverty does to people. It strips them of their mind, of their ambition, strips them of self-esteem, and makes them feel like a second class or third class citizen. And on that day, I promised I was going to break the cycle of generational poverty. If I ever became a father, I would be a good father, unlike mine. And I found a small high school, and the principal, he felt bad for me, but he made me earn it and said, "You're going to play sports, you're going to have a high GPA, and you're going to be active in the church." And he cut the tuition. It was a private Catholic high school. He cut it in half. And I worked as a dishwasher, washing dishes, and I paid my way through high school and through college, and went to law school in Boston. And That's sort of that moment with my mother, her telling me that she loved me, but college wasn't for people like us, was sort of like one of the pivotal moments of my life.
Wow. So, how did you get enlisted in the Marines? Was it after you were done high school and college, after you went to law school, or before you went to law school?
That's a great question. Ironically, I was in law school in Boston at New England School of Law, and I realized that I'm the American dream. Like, I'm going from that neighborhood and I'm going to be a lawyer, and eventually I'm going to make money and I'm going to get out of debt. And I was proud. And so I actually joined the Marine Corps between my second and third year law school. And I couldn't get into Harvard Law School, and I certainly couldn't afford it. But I'm proud because I beat out Harvard Law, BC, BU, and Suffolk Law Schools all around Boston. And the Marine Corps chose me to be the 1994 law contract to represent, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And so I went and got commissioned, finished law school, went on active duty, spent 7 years on active duty, and unfortunately I got hurt. It wasn't in a combat situation, but it was in training. And the Marine Corps, even if you're a lawyer in the Marine Corps, you have to be able to do Marine stuff, like you need to be able to hike 20 miles with 80 pounds on your back and stuff like that. And I had a couple back surgeries, and those days were over for me. So the Marine Corps medically retired me. And for the last 22 years, I've been representing people who get sick and die from mesothelioma and lung cancer caused by asbestos. And I've been fighting companies and insurance companies, major corporations for 2 decades, representing people in Massachusetts and New England against those companies. And so that's sort of who I am. I decided to run for U.S. Senate because I don't recognize, our country anymore. I wonder, could a poor person like me today, could they do what I did? Like, are the prices too high now? Is inflation too high? It's very troubling when you're a poor person like I was, and you grow up. Listen, I listened to my mom cry at night on nights that we went to bed hungry, and I listened to those tears, and I could hear the shame and the humiliation that she felt by not being able to feed her children. And, that's something that doesn't go away. It doesn't matter how much money I have in the bank today, or whatever success I've achieved. Listening to those tears, it stays with you. It lives inside you. And I don't want to be one of the last poor people in America to make it. I want to help other poor people and working families have a shot like I got. And so that's why I decided to run for office.
Okay. So you're running for office for this term, or are you already a senator? Are you?
No, no, I'm running for U.S. Senate November 5th against Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts.
Okay, okay. So what would your mom say right now if your mom kind of would look at your accomplishment? How would she feel right now? Because she said that people like you cannot, make it to high school because of the family,
Right.
poverty and stuff like that. What would she say right now?
Well, and my mom passed away in March of 2000, so she got to see me become successful, and she was very proud, obviously, and she that's something I'm very happy with. She's not with me today, at least physically, but I was able to see the pride in her. My mother, kept saying, "Don't ever tell John what he can't do," and she acknowledges that herself. And she's like, "Don't ever tell my son what he can't accomplish or what he can't do. He can accomplish anything that he sets his mind to." And so I'm very happy that before she died, that she was able to at least see that people like us deserve the best life too. And I was able to, help my mom in many ways. And so it's something that I'm very proud of.
That's nice, John. So tell us a little bit about your book. What is your book about? Is it about your life growing up? Is it a fictional? Is it a memoir? What exactly is the book about? Like, give us kind of like a little rundown of what the book is.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's called Food Stamp Warrior because obviously I grew up on food stamps and welfare, and it's called Food Stamp Warrior, and it's a memoir, and it is a true story of my life. The reason I wrote the book is because I just told you, that I experienced being raped for 2 years, the violence. The stabbing wasn't the only thing that happened to her. She was hospitalized 2 other occasions, very bad. I've been in, multiple fights, knife fights, I've been shot at, all that kind of stuff. And I pushed it down and I said, my hatred of poverty guided me a long way. And if I was going to be a good father, if I was going to be a father, I was going to be a great father. That was my attitude. And I pushed it down. I never sought therapy about it. I just said to myself, there's nothing I can do to change it. It happened. don't be a victim, John, and move forward. And that carried me a long way in life. And when I'm about 50 years old, right? So this is, 7, 8 years ago. I started waking up. My daughters were in college, and I was a millionaire, to be blunt. And I had a house with an indoor swimming pool, and I had a movie theater, and I had all these things. And my kids were in college, and I'm divorced and living alone. Now that they're in college, and I was waking up at 3 in the morning crying, and I was crying about being raped. I was crying about my mom being stabbed. I was crying about my best friend dying in my arms after a drive-by shooting when I was 17 years old. And I couldn't understand why. Why, after 40 years, am I letting it bother me now? And so I went to therapy, and what I realized is that unexamined trauma, if you don't deal with it, eventually it'll catch up to you. And eventually, when you least expect it, with money in the bank and a good life, and everybody thinks that, you've got the perfect life, here it is, you're sad and you're upset. And so it's how unexamined trauma can sneak up on you many, many years later, and that it's okay to admit that you're hurt. It's okay to admit that you were scarred as a person. It's okay to admit that you're maybe not as strong as you thought you were, that it can affect you, that it can hurt you, that it can make you cry. And it's okay to go to therapy, and it's okay to talk about it and try to work through it. And so I wrote the book and published it because, I don't want people to experience what I did, because it almost broke me. I was taking pain pills because of my back, and I was self-medicating, and I was making bad decisions because I was acting out. And all of those things. And so it's about, listen, it's okay. We're all human. We all carry pain around with us, and it's okay to open up about it.
So when did you publish the book? Was it last year? How long ago did you publish the book?
September of last year. So in September, it'll be 1 year.
So why did you wait so long to publish the book?
Well, I started writing it 2 weeks after my mom died. So I started writing it in May of 2000. April of 2000. Because my mom was dying. I was taking the pain pills too much. And when she died and I buried her, I realized that I had to do something. So the book was therapy for me. It allowed me I would write sometimes. I didn't sleep some nights. I would stay up all night and I would write about these experiences. And as I wrote, I would weep and cry, reliving them. But it was the best therapy for me. And I actually wasn't going to publish the book because I have a reputation. I have a business, and you're going to tell the world, that you were raped as a child, as brutally raped as I was. It's not an easy thing, to say. I held it inside for 40 years. And a couple people read my book before it was published, and they pleaded with me. They said, "John, you really need to publish this book because it can help other people that are struggling." And I'm very proud of it. I published it, and I've had grown men come up to me with tears in their eyes. They're 50, 60 years old, and they tell me that they experienced something as a child that they've never talked about, and that reading about me and me being so open about it and vulnerable and just admitting it and admitting that it scarred me and it hurt me, that helped them, and that they went to therapy. I've had someone who was a drug addict read it and put themselves in rehab after reading it, and says that it helped them. And so when you hear stories like that, you could never regret, publishing the book.
Wow. So, John, where can the listeners get in touch with you? How can they get a copy of your book? And do you have any speaking engagements coming up where you talk about your book and you talk about what your story and how to get out of poverty?
Sure. They on X, they can follow me on Twitter X at John uh, E Deaton 1, Deaton 1, John E Deaton 1. And on my book, Food Stamp Warrior, is available on Amazon books. So if you just put Food Stamp Warrior or John Deaton, it'll come up. And I'm running for U.S. Senate, so if they go to johndeatonforsenate.com, they'll be able to find where I'm speaking and where I'm going and things like that. And so if they want to volunteer with the campaign, that's great. You know, I could always use door knockers and things like that. So I really appreciate you having me on. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Very welcome. So, John, if you have any last words for the listeners, what would you say to someone who's going through a similar situation like you've been through? What would you say to them to encourage and motivate them?
I mean, the three words are never give up. Life is hard and it will knock you down. And your biggest adversary is in the mirror. You know, your biggest adversary is yourself. Don't sweat the little things. Life is going to give you big things to worry about, the death of a parent or a loved one, or you battle opioid addiction, like I did with the pain pills. And just know that if you keep fighting and never give up, eventually you can get the life you deserve. We all deserve a good life. And don't dwell about mistakes you made. Just live for today and tomorrow. And if you keep fighting, and I think you're gonna win. But it may take you harder, maybe harder than you think, or harder than it should be. It may take you longer than you think. I could assure you that I never thought that I would make all those successes. And then when I was at my most successful time in my life financially, that all that stuff would come and sneak up on me. And so if you are going through troubles, it's okay to be open and transparent about it and seek therapy. If you in a situation, even if it's just talking to a friend and opening up about it, and then you'll realize we all are pretty similar to each other. And the thing about the book that I've learned is it resonates with so many people. It could be the poverty issue. It could be racial issues that I talk about in the book. It could be violence that you've been subject to, or domestic violence that you witnessed. At the end of it could be cancer. I talk about cancer. Obviously, the loss of my mother, I talk about. So there's so many things that we share in common. And I think that when you read the book, you'll realize it'll resonate. And regardless of your religion, regardless of your skin color, regardless of your financial situation, at the end of the day, we're all the same.
Wow, well said. Well, John, thank you for being on Beauty of Colors podcast.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be with you.